What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Disc Golf Nerd Plastic Podcast. In this episode, I have Andy here in studio with me, and we had a chance to sit down and talk to Dion Arlyn. Dion is a long-term professional disc golfer. He lives out here in the Pacific Northwest. I hope to hook up with him in the future to either help me test plastic or would really love to utilize some of his knowledge to help you guys throw farther and improve your game overall. Dion is one of the farthest throwers in the world. He has incredible distance, and he actually breaks down his longest throw on record for us right here on this episode, which I think is a wild story and really interesting. So I had a great time talking with Dion. He's a smart dude. He knows a lot, and we had a lot of conversations about all different aspects. One of the things I really wanted to talk to him about was this rapid change that we've seen from Discraft, with them bringing in Paul and so many other players on the off season, and how well that's going for them, and just to kind of get his thoughts on that, because I was first introduced to Dion from an old Discraft Clinic video that he had on throwing maximum distance. That's where I first knew of him, and he has been throwing Discraft plastic for quite a long time. So it was really great to have his perspective on that and many other topics in this really fun conversation. Where the conversation with Dion picks up, I had just asked him his thoughts on where Discraft is headed and the huge change that we've seen with Discraft over the last few months. And we just get right into it from there and talk about all kinds of different things. Had an absolute blast talking with Dion. This is one of my favorite episodes we've recorded. And I hope you guys really enjoy it. A couple of quick personal notes from me. I have been, of course, continuing the ball rolling, testing a bunch of plastic. Look for my Discraft Kong review coming out relatively soon, the Paul Macbeth Kong. We had a chance to test 3 of those. I'll be giving one away, and my full review will be out later this week for Fresh Plastic Friday. And beyond that, I have a ton of plastic in the queue. I have a Gatekeeper, Pioneer, Recoil, Raptors. I have a couple of Gateway discs that I'm testing that you will see eventually as well, like the Journey, which based on an initial testing from me and Andy seems to be a really nice flying driver. And I'm sure I have other stuff in there that I'm forgetting as well. I will also be looking to put together a Big Z crank versus the Big Z Nuke comparison video once we get the time to make that happen. And also, first and foremost, next time I get a chance to hook up with Andy, we are going to do the full mega overstable mid-range comparison video with a Gator, a Buzz OS, a Deflector, a Justice, Anchor, Anvil, and I'm hoping to maybe even secure 1 or 2 others before that actually happens, so you can get a sense of all of the most overstable mid-ranges from several different brands and manufacturers out there, and figure out which one might be best suited for your game. I think the overstable mid-range is an absolute staple for all professional players' bags. You have to have something in there that's slow and really overstable. You know what it's going to do for those tricky approaches or headwind approaches, and those times where you need to pull a disc out of the bag that you know exactly what it's going to do to get you up and down. That is an absolutely crucial disc for me. It's been the Anchor for quite a while for me, but I'm actually backing the Deflector right now after testing a few of them. We'll see. I haven't thrown the Gator yet. It's been a while since I've thrown the Buzz OS, so once we get out and test it, it may fluctuate for me as well. For the time being, the Deflector is working out super well. It's got a very similar flight to the Justice, perhaps even a touch more overstable on certain release angles, but if I power into it, it can get a touch more distance for me, and I like the feel and the look of it very much. So that's just a quick update for what's going on with me. You guys might have also noticed that I have created a Patreon account for the Disc Golf Nerd. I'm looking to try to bring in some funds to take this thing to the next level. I want to host this podcast on podcasting apps, and even with my first couple of patrons that have come through, I am very close to being able to do that. If you are interested, I have a full video on that out on my channel that you can take a listen and let me know what you think. I kind of break it all down for you guys, the way I'm thinking about approaching it and my thoughts on the whole situation if you're interested. And if you want to just check out my Patreon page, it's Disc Golf Nerd, so just patreon.com/Disc Golf Nerd. Without further ado, let's get into the interview with Dion Arlyn. Thanks for listening. I'll check you all very soon. Cheers. I was kind of thinking that I wanted to talk to you about Discraft, because Andy's a long-term Discraft thrower. You obviously are. I've been around it for a long time, and it's gotten so crazy and so many different changes recently. I'm curious on your perspective on the whole thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first off, thanks for having me, guys. And it's so exciting to see all the changes and see how much is coming out, all the different blends, all the different molds. First and foremost, it's just super awesome.
Yeah, I agree. What is your relationship to Discraft at this present time? Are you still on the team?
Technically, no. I'm just a part of the Discraft family. I think I'm on the ambassador team on the website, so I'm not like, under contract or anything like that. But Discraft is all about just having a good relationship with its players. So, if I need anything, I just shoot an email and it comes my way. But I try not to ask for anything unless it's related to an upcoming event, or I think the last shipment of discs I asked for was right when the swirly blend ESP stuff came out, and I was getting ready to play Farragut, so wanted to get some throws in on the new discs with that.
Yeah. What's your impressions on those new plastic blends?
They're so good. They're magic. They're just amazing. Really nice. The ESP, it just feels so good in the hand, and the Forces, which is what I throw up predominantly, just molded up so nice. Kind of a slight dome, perfect stability. They're great.
Maybe for you, they're too beefy for me and Andy. We reviewed one of those.
Oh, good Lord!
And it was pretty beefy. It was maybe a little bit of a pop top ESP Force max weight.
It felt so good. I wanted it to be just everything I wanted it to be. I'm a surge thrower primarily, and have been since. Well, when they came out back in 2005 or whenever it was. But when the Force came out, the original ESP, those were awesome. And then when the new ESP came out, I grabbed them. I was like, oh man, it kind of harkened me back to not crack plastic, to Lumberjack Open, the first time they were available.
Yeah.
And I was just so geeked. And then I threw it and was like, oh, wow, yeah, that's right. I don't have 450 plus feet of power. And
it's a little much for us.
This is too big.
So have you yet tested like the Kong or the Raptor or any of those new releases?
No, haven't been able to throw those yet. I know Kyle's got some. I played discing at the Depot up in Bremerton on this past Sunday, and talked to Scott Papa for a little bit, who you may know is a long-time Discraft, and actually the guy who recommended me to the team, which got my whole relationship with Discraft going. And he had the Kong in his bag, so haven't thrown it, just held it, but I'm looking forward to getting a chance to throw it.
Yeah, I met Scott at Beaver State several years ago. He's a really nice guy. I was asking him about the Discraft plastic, and I recognized him from the old clinic videos and all that stuff. So he gave me a Discraft hat and everything. And speaking of which, that was really where I was introduced to you, was the old Discraft Clinic videos, including your max distance clinic, where you're showing off your 360 and your max power. Do you have any idea if they plan to revive that series? And have you been in touch with them about maybe helping them provide some content?
Let's see. I have not been in touch with them in regards to new content. I would love the opportunity, though. I have a teaching background, so I feel comfortable on camera and like to discuss disc golf technique and try to help players be successful. I would imagine that they have plans for new content. Clearly the focus right now is on Paul. And, produce is in the bag videos, the relationship with Jomez. So as the year progresses, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw some instructional content, but I doubt that that's the priority right now.
I've been hoping that they would revive that for quite a while now, and I feel like this is the perfect time for them to bring that back, because that was the main thing that really drew me to Discraft in those days, was that they were the ones that were putting the effort into trying to help my game as a beginner. All those clinics were among the very little content that was out at that time. That was like the majority of it was those videos. So I remember feeling loyalty to them based on that. We're kind of seeing that from Dynamic Discs with a lot of the instructional content they put out, is kind of reinforcing that loyalty from their fan base. Would you agree with that?
I would, yeah. And I would say that that's been a clear, differentiator that Dynamic Discs has pursued, for the past few years.
Yeah.
and I think they do a great job. I don't watch as much of it as I would like to. I think honestly, it's just a matter of how much free time do I have. But I like all the guys on the team, and they make it fun and interesting. So yeah, I think they're doing a great job. And Discraft has such visibility right now. I agree. Now would be a great time. And you got players like Yuli and Macbeth. Just rock stars who are going to draw a lot of views and have a lot of good insights to share.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's ripe for that, and I think that would be a smart way to tie it all together. You're already having this new impact and bringing in all these new players to try out the plastic, and then if you can bring in the expertise of the new players on the team and kind of tie that all together, I think that makes perfect sense. And hopefully, if they get back to that, you could be involved with that, because I truly think that you did a great job on that video in particular, and you definitely seem like you're very comfortable conveying the information and breaking it down in a way that makes sense.
Well, thank you. Yeah, and I would be excited to see what other folks on the team. We have so many newly minted Discraft players. A lot of people out there that I am just not familiar with as far as their game and their strengths. So yeah, it's kind of fun if you imagine each player doing a video and what their kind of highlights are. That would be kind of a cool way to get to know them.
Yeah, I totally agree. Where did your personal relationship with Discraft begin? How long have you been throwing it?
Yeah, so I'll give you a little bit of backstory. I started playing in 2003. Colin Sexton, Nate's brother, is one of my close friends, and he was probably my kind of closest companion in high school as far as like doing activities, and we played Ultimate. So his family got me into disc golf in my summer before my junior year in high school. And because they had already, been playing tournaments, and I already, am very competitive, I just kind of started doing it with them. And so I had kind of a mixed bag, as an amateur, all the way up until probably 2006. I was getting ready to turn pro. Nate Sexton had already been sponsored by Innova at that point, plus Dave and Avery. Dave Feldberg, Avery Jenkins were living in Oregon and going to U of O at the time. So Oregon was all Innova. So I had kind of an Innova lineup, and was kind of hoping to become like the 5th or 6th sponsored pro by Innova in Oregon, which just wasn't a reality. So after playing up and down the West Coast with Nate for a few years in Open, I met Scott Papa at a Fort Steilacoom Open. We were hanging out at Jason Koch's house, who was the tournament director of that year's tournament, and he's a long-time Innova guy. Grew up next to La Mirada, friends with Sam Ferens and all those dudes.
Okay.
So we're sitting around the table, and Scott Papa basically says, kind of bets Jason like, hey, I bet you, turn this guy Discraft and he'll be successful with that, and Jason's like, no way, he should stay Innova and blah, 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 and so I was like, yeah, I'll switch. Like, I'll get sponsored. Let's do it. So end of 2008, I think the Willamette Open in October of 2008 was the first tournament I played with an all Discraft bag. Didn't even have a putter. I think I was putting with a Meteor.
Wow, really?
Yeah, because I was putting classic rocks, and I liked the low profile, disc. And the Challenger that I had was like a Flex Challenger. It was all big and bubbly and gummy, and I didn't like it. So the Meteor was like the best thing in my hand for putting. I think I played terrible that tournament anyways. And then 2009, got some more discs, got like officially sponsored, and then just immediately started having success. Won a couple of events in Oregon, went down to USDGC. And in my rookie year of USDGC, took 14th place, and was on the second card in the final round.
Wow.
It's like sitting in 8th place going into the final round. And it was just like everything kind of clicked, and it was just a great experience. And so I was like, this is it. I'm doing it. Like, I'm a pro, I'm sponsored, I'm like playing well at big events. And And that was kind of the backstory and segue into 10 years later, still throwing Discraft.
Yeah, right on. So how do you feel about all these people that have kind of just all of a sudden discovered Discraft now that Paul's on the team, and we're seeing things like the discs go for much more than retail online, and we're seeing a lot more competition for the plastic, and we're seeing a lot more people just interested in it in general. Do you have any kind of, like, not necessarily resentment, but is it kind of weird for you to be like, where were you guys? You know, this has been great forever, and then all of a sudden now you're here.
No resentment, no negativity. You know, I kind of look at it like I was in on the secret a long time before everybody else, you know, so
that's a healthier way to look at it.
Yeah. Discraft never got much love in the Northwest. You know, just because it's such of a dominated territory. And then once Prodigy came along and kind of, we saw that, you know, fractionalization of sponsorship amongst different teams. Prodigy discs themselves, I feel like didn't really catch on. Like, they had a lot of visibility on the tournament scene, but I don't feel like their plastic was super widely distributed.
I agree. Yeah, you really didn't, even though they brought in all those players, you really didn't see that translate to the kind of casual players throwing more of that plastic. I almost wonder how different that whole situation would be if it somehow were to occur right now with the internet and the differences there, because even when that took place, it wasn't as prevalent. There weren't nearly as many retailers, and it just wasn't the same level. So yeah, I'd be interested to see how that would have changed if it were to take place now.
I think that's a comparable, you know, situation to what we're seeing. Like, I'm seeing dudes switch up their entire bag to Discraft, you know, simply because Paul's on the team now. And to me, that's like, you know, kind of ridiculous. Like, you don't need to switch your whole bag just because the good guy is playing in it, but that's what Discraft would want. So I'm not going to knock it.
Sure. Yeah, that's clearly what they were hoping would happen.
I wonder how it feels for Discraft to be basically printing money at this point.
Yeah.
Just like, no matter what, can they do wrong? Like, everything they release is selling like hotcakes. I guess I'll use the standard colloquialism.
Yeah. Yeah, it does,
well, sure.
It does seem like they have it under control right now, and it's definitely going really well. Do we think it's going to slow down like soon, or do you think it'll just kind of continue to grow?
I think it's going to continue to grow for at least a few months longer, maybe into next season, and then start to plateau, you know, as all things are going to do. But you know, there's so many molds that are undiscovered. Like, you know, I was throwing trackers. I had a pair of trackers that were kind of not overstable. They felt really good in the hand, and they were very straight flying, and they flew basically how Undertakers fly today.
The Players Cup trackers from 2006?
I had some of those, no, but these were just regular stock run trackers. There was a run that was made in 2011, and they didn't mold up super overstable. They were just very neutral flying. And it truly was like what the Undertaker is today. That's what I had with my tracker.
Okay.
And, you know, that disc never caught on, you know, but as soon as Paul started throwing it, now it's just like, it's going to come back. Like, I think it's even out of production, but I think they're going to bring it back because, you know, obviously it has so much visibility. So
yeah, I've thought about that with a couple of the things that like Paul's throwing that really aren't, even amongst Discraft throwers, aren't really necessarily a popular mold. I wonder if we'll see more of a push from Discraft to kind of get more of those out on the shelves, even stuff that might be out of production. Is the Predator still in production? Or I heard that they were taking the Predator out, but now that he's throwing it, I kind of doubt that's going to happen. Do you know anything about that?
Yeah, the last memo I saw was the Predator and the Surge were going away and basically being replaced by the Machete and the Punisher.
Excuse me. Wait.
Slow down. Andy's about to have a stroke.
So my heart dropped quite a bit. So oh no.
That's exactly. You know what's funny is that's exactly what you had said. is that when the Punisher came out, you're like, oh no, this might be a bad sign for the Surge because it kind of had that somewhat similar vibe, not quite as overstable as a Force or anything. Oh man, that's interesting.
I'm gonna. That means I have to go seek out more of those green 2008, nice smooth dome, perfect, almost like pearlescent plastic.
You just better hope Paul doesn't start throwing Surges, or else
no,
you're toast.
that'd be even better.
That would be better because then maybe they'd stick around.
Do me a favor, Dion. Send Paul a message and just say, "Hey, throw a Surge in your bag for a couple rounds. Throw it once."
Yeah, totally.
Just hold it up so we can see the stamp on Joe Maz one time. That's all we need. Somebody will get a screenshot. Yeah. We'll circulate it around. And we can save that. We can still make it happen. So that was the last thing you had heard, is that both of those were going out of production?
Yeah, like those were kind of going away. And same thing with the drone. Drone was going away and being replaced by the Buzz OS. Like basically, as some of those newer, like I'll say modern feeling molds were being produced, right, it seemed to be kind of covering slots of kind of the mid 2000s molded stuff. So
if I remember correctly, you were a Hornet thrower for a while, right? Do you still throw Hornets?
I don't, man. I wish I did. I have some I might dig up and start throwing again. But like that's a perfect example of like Paul doesn't even know what a Hornet is, but if he threw it, he'd probably love it. And all of a sudden we get like swirly blend, Hornets that I get. So it's like there's so many of those out there that the world gets to rediscover.
I was really hoping personally that Yuli was gonna throw magnets and that he was gonna release some like Yuli stamp magnets, because I'm a huge magnet guy. I'm a big, just super trashed, beat up soft magnets are like my favorite disc of all time. I just put a ton of hyzer on them and they stand up and just laser straight all the way, and they're just one of my favorite discs of all time. And I was kind of hoping to see maybe a little bit of love for the magnet, because it's one of those discs that kind of gets forgotten about these days.
For sure, that, and I saw he was flicking a Z ringer, and I'm like, oh yeah, here we go. Bring the zinger, zinger is kind of what we call it, nice. Into the spotlight. Like that would be them.
I remember the initial run of Z ringers and how it was super limited thing. They were all red.
Yep.
And then I don't know. From what I was told, is that it was not molding up very well, and that was all they got out of a full run.
Oh, just those red ones?
Yeah, no, okay. I could be completely misinformed, but...
Well, this is my one contribution to the collector history was I commissioned the run of Z Ringers for an A-tier. I was a tournament director. It was Willamette Open. It was an A-tier, and I had 30 of them made for fundraising. I think they made about 40 or 50, sent some to Michael Joe, had some at the factory, sent some to some other team guys.
Oh, wow.
But I got 30 of them with the stamp for that year, and I sold them for the tournament. I kept like 3 or 4 of them, but like that's all they made for probably like close to a decade until Ledgestone ran another run of them. But
okay,
like so that's
MJ putts with ringers, right? Or did he used to putt with ringers? Or I don't know.
No, he's all right.
He still does. Okay, nice. Yeah, that's a mold that I had for a little while, but not any one that I've really tried too much. I should look into one of the Ledgestone ones. That would be a fun disc to check out for a review.
Since this is the plastic podcast, is there anything on those? I don't know if you've even paid attention or at all to the Ledgestone stuff, but have you seen anything on the Ledgestone discs that you're like, ooh, yeah, that's something I'd like? Just over the course of however many years they've been doing Ledgestone special stuff.
Yeah,
it's been a lot. There's been a lot of releases. For
sure. I definitely am not up on all of the different mixes they've had, but the one that caught my eye was the TI crank, because I love the crank mold, but it's so understable I never really get a chance to use it.
Yeah.
So I was hoping that the TI crank would mold up a little bit more overstable, and it did kind of. So I got a couple of those, and I usually have one in the bag, but
I don't know if you've tested, but we reviewed it was like a 165 flat top swirly ESP crank that I found to be pretty stable. Obviously, our arm speed is hugely different, but it was way more overstable than the Big Z one that I have, like almost a completely different disc.
Sure. The wide rimmed drivers at the lighter weights, it's kind of a coin flip where the what do they call it? The parting line is gonna land. So sometimes they just pop off the mold and cool at the factory, and the wing just gets sucked up, and then they're like super beefcakes. You actually see that with the lighter weight runs. That happens across the board with forces, destroyers, bosses.
It's usually like the kind of mid to upper 160s too. That you see that.
That's exactly correct.
I think the first time I heard that was years ago. Will Shoestrick said in the bag that he was looking for like the 168 destroyers because some of those in the high 160s are the most overstable ones he could find at the time. That was a long time ago, obviously, since he was pre the whole Prodigy switch. Were you involved in that at all? Were you in talks with Prodigy at all, or was that even on your radar?
No, I wasn't. Trying to remember. So I toured, like, my big real, like, actual time out on the road was in 2011. And then after that, I took kind of some years off, got married, was starting family. So I didn't really play visibly after 2011. So like when Prodigy switched and all that, I don't think I was in that conversation at all.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. So you're well known for your distance. We were actually mentioned it last episode. We had just mentioned that we were going to try to talk to you, and then we're talking about your distance clinic and stuff like that. What is your all-time furthest throw on record?
Oh man, that's a fun one. 853 feet.
And it was, God, what? Give us the story. What was the disc? What were the conditions?
Yeah, so this is at Emporia, Kansas. Glass blown open, 2011. I had won the Big D in the desert. Well, I guess not the Big D in the desert part, but the Whiff Diff, World Championships distance throwing in Vegas at the end of 2010.
Okay.
And so at that point, I'm like, I'm doing it. I'm going out on the road. So early in the season, April, Kansas. I'm hanging out with Robbie Bratton, Yuli, Steve Mills. If you remember who Steve Mills.
Oh, I'm originally from Michigan, so I know Steve Mills. Chaboy, everything's a spit out.
Yep. Millsy, and we were staying with Eric McCabe. I'm like just kind of like the fun tour life stuff, right?
Yeah.
So we get to the distance qualifiers, and there's two events going on. They have raw distance, and they have distance plus accuracy. And what they did was they ran a rope out into the driving area where they were doing the distance qualifying. And then your total distance was your throw minus your distance from the rope. So like how far you could throw but keep it on line.
Oh, I see. So the rope is running dead down the center, and you're trying to land as close to it as you can?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I get there. We're one of the first groups to go. It's like a 30 to 40 mile per hour tailwind. The real field temperature was probably like 20 degrees. It was like freezing because of the wind was so cold.
Yeah.
And it's a straight tailwind. I'm the first to go. I put my $5 in, and I throw. You get 3 shots. I throw a backhand force, like lands 10, 15 feet from the rope, probably like 500. I'm kind of like playing it for accuracy at this point.
Okay.
And then I throw kind of a flex shot force, and then I throw a 360 force anti-bomb, and it goes like 750 and lands a foot away from the rope. So no one else competed in that segment of the distance competition because I went first and had like the immaculate throw.
So you just shut it down. That's awesome.
Yeah, I was like, dang it. Okay, well, anyways, I switch over to my nukes and I start to throw just the normal distance ones. And the wind is pushing so hard from behind that as soon as the nuke would turn, it would just bottom out and kind of get slammed to the ground, like probably only 300-400 feet away.
Okay.
So that happens once, happens twice. I throw a third one and I like pop it up a little bit extra high, but it still drops like as soon as it turns. So I turn around, I stop watching it, and I hear everyone kind of go like, whoa. and I look back, and it's just like bouncing, like turbulence, like 30, 40 feet up and down, just getting carried away by the wind. And it goes and goes and goes and goes and goes and basically goes out of sight, kind of down a tree line. And the spotter is running after it. And, I don't even know. I thought it had touched the ground and like skipped, like it was moving around so much.
Sure.
So that was it. We leave. I didn't stick around for them to do the range finding on it. I was just like, okay, that was weird, whatever. And then I start getting these text messages like, did you hear, like, Dion broke the distance world record? Because it was still held by Sandstrom at the time at like 840 feet.
Oh, okay.
Huh. And I'm like,
what? Like a DX Valkyrie or something, I think he threw for that.
Yeah, with the Valkyrie. I was like, what are people talking about? And then I finally kind of track down the message, and my shot hit a building in flight at 853 feet. And they hit the rangefind just to the building, basically. And that was my preliminary throw. And at that time, that was like the longest recorded throw.
It's too bad Whiff Diff wasn't there to certify that, right?
Wow. That is a wild story, man. That's intense. So, say, taking away any kind of like condition, say you're in like a naval, like, aircraft hangar or whatever, an Air Force aircraft hangar, no wind whatsoever, completely flat ground, what would you say would be your like top end?
Yeah, I love this thought experiment. I've put a lot of thought into that idea, and
it needs to be a thing. I think that would be a really great way to do it. I think that would be really great, just to perfectly flat and level. It's there's no kind of elevation whatsoever. There's no wind affected. That would be the great way to kind of settle it, to see who actually does throw the farthest.
Oh yeah. So, it's going to be way, way shorter than people imagine. Like, I would be pleased if I hit 500 feet in those conditions.
Okay.
And it's without air movement. Like, the discs, when it gets to its gliding phase, is like not doing anything. Like, it's the whole reason distance becomes possible is because it turns, catches a little bit of drift or wind, and then basically gets carried however far, 100, 200 feet right. on that wind cushion until it starts to flex out. Okay. So if you take away that air, basically it's going up, it's turning, starts to hyzer out way sooner, and is not getting much distance at all. So, 500 to 550, I would say is possible. And I'll give you your top 5 people who I think would get over 600. Eagle, of course, Simon, Garrett Gurthey, Alex Geisinger, and who would be my fifth?
Wiggins,
Drew.
Yeah, Wiggins. Yep, for sure.
Wiggins is the funny one because like Eagle, he looks like he's putting some effort into it, especially when he's trying to get up towards that top level. Garrett Gurthey doesn't look like he's doing a whole lot when he throws, and then Wiggins just looks like he just puts so much into it. He grunts and he does the big run up, and it's such a like explosion. It's really fun to watch him throw. I really like that. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so those are the dudes who are like at the very apex of distance throwing, and then I'm obviously an elite thrower, but I would be like the second tier. If those guys are like Kevin Durant and LeBron James, I'm like Kemba Walker. Okay. Nice, man. That would be cool though. I would like to see that take place at some point, just as almost like an experiment, just to see how different it really is if you take out all the different external factors from it. It would be pretty interesting to find that out.
Yeah, absolutely. The distance line changes. It's not a big, high turnover shot anymore. I think it's more of a penetrating line drive.
Right. Yeah, that makes total sense. Yeah, because you're not trying to throw it up into the wind at that point. You're just trying to maximize the actual flight of the disc. That would be interesting.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
when you're out playing a casual round and you see people out there trying to throw, what are like some of the most common mistakes that you see people make when they're actually just trying to throw distance shots out there on the course?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're going to land in two camps, like dudes who understand that it's kind of like an athletic endeavor and they're like kind of ramped up and they're trying to throw hard. They're doing so many extra movements that are just killing their rhythm and not setting their hips up for the throw whatsoever. It's tons of arm pumps, lots of extra fast feet steps, just way too much movement. So you gotta rein those guys in and start like really slowly, methodically building up the form. Like, hey, step, reach, pull. Like, just boil it down to the bare essentials. Sure. Kind of rein those. And then the other mistake is people who aren't quite as athletic, maybe have more of like the frisbee background. They're all like curl and spin, and they don't have any like. I use the lawnmower analogy, don't have any like pull as far as like straightening out their throw.
Right. So you see basically a lot of rounding, kind of more of a loopy throw, or you see the guy out there who's just trying to hulk up on it and thinks if he runs really fast into it, that's going to necessarily translate into distance, which doesn't so much work out that way.
Exactly. Like if you really like start to try to draw similarities along like different top guys and their throwing form, like I actually really liked Simon's video. He did the analysis of his throw and the amateur throw.
Totally, I totally agree. That was excellent.
Pros barely move. Like you move to get your hips in position and your reach back to line up your shot, but like other than that, you're just like floating forward. Like nothing is like bouncing or jerking around. So that's what people need to pick up on.
Other than James Conrad, I guess he's kind of the exception. He's got a huge run up. He does a bunch of steps, and he really just throws his whole body at the shot. It's pretty interesting to watch.
I feel like Dion might be the only person that you'll have on this podcast where I can make this analogy. James Conrad reminds me so much of Damon Pugh.
Of who?
Damon Pugh.
I don't know that.
He was a teammate of yours for a while back then. He was a Michigan guy touring.
I've never heard his name.
Well, and there's no way to cut this out, is there?
Well, you blew it. No, I can trim out. I can trim it out.
No, he was a teammate, and he always carried a broom around with his makeshift cart made out of like file folder bins.
Oh, really?
Like this is I'll give you an idea of the time frame. This is like when the Spectra first came out. He was on the team.
Oh, wow.
And he had that super long run up, and like you could triple a T-pad in length, and it wasn't long enough.
I find it interesting, too, because James will he will back up so far that he has to step, like even if the T-pad is raised, he would rather step up onto it in the middle of his run up than just stand on the T-pad and do an X step and throw the shot. I feel like that's kind of strange. Nico does the same thing where he'll do that long run up, even if he has to like change elevation and step up onto an elevated T-pad. I just feel like that's just not helping. I don't know. Maybe
it's all what you're comfortable with, right? It's what you've known and what you've done for the longest time.
Yeah.
And if it works, it works. I mean, look at someone in the same sort of vein. You look at someone like Eric Oakley, who's got that arm wilding out.
Yeah.
And the hop and everything. I mean, the hop's been a thing forever, Brinster, whatever.
Yeah.
But like it's unconventional form, but it works.
Yeah.
But the basic mechanics of it are sort of they're hitting all of the right stuff. They're getting their hips into place. They're pulling back on a straighter line. The basic mechanics are there. It's just all of the excess. That's kind of. It's just what they're comfortable with. Now it's probably holding them back, honestly.
Yeah, it just doesn't seem necessary. I just feel like James has such good touch and form that he could just do an X step on a short T-pad. I mean, even if he only did that when he doesn't have a smooth transition to the pad, it just seems interesting to me that he would rather do that step up than just kind of slow it down a little bit. It's intriguing for sure.
Honestly, I'm in the same boat, so two things that you talked about just a moment ago. So James has a lot of run up, but he's not bouncing. Like he looks bouncy. That's true. And he's light on his feet.
Yeah.
But he's in rhythm and he's collecting himself. He's not off balance. Like that's the mistake amateur dudes make, is like so many knees and elbows are flying around that they're out of position. Their core and everything is way out of alignment. James is doing that because he's bringing all of those, dynamic moving pieces into the center to gear up for the throw. And so that's honestly similar to my throw. I'm not as bouncy as him, but I step up on the T-pad because, I take 5 steps to get everything in alignment and get the momentum and timing in place. So, the alternative would be to take 3 steps and miss my line by 22%, or navigate the step up and hit my line.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, because, I guess I've done it. We've all encountered different tee surfaces, or even just a run-up for an approach in the fairway that has some kind of obstacle you need to navigate with your footwork or whatever. I have trouble with my footwork in general, so I feel like that would just, adding any kind of extra steps going into it would just throw me off. I usually do like 1 step onto the tee pad before I actually go into my full form from there. But yeah, I've just always thought it was interesting to see the people that have the extra steps before that. And I wonder if that's something that gets back to what you said earlier about kind of amateur players. I wonder if they see that and they try to kind of jump ahead to that when they don't have the foundation set up, if that makes sense. Like,
sure.
Where you'd be better off as an amateur slowing everything down, and then the guys that can really amp up into a super fast run up and a fast pull, that's when everything's perfectly dialed in, and they've done it so many times that they can kind of amplify the muscle memory. You know what I mean?
For sure. Well, here's an analogy for you that just kind of dawned on me, so it may not actually be good, but we'll try it out right now.
Give it a shot.
If you watch professional bowling, those guys have the exact same routine to every throw or initial bowl, first ball, right? That throw is the exact same steps, timing, tempo, and they do that to get the ball into the backswing, and their final step brings the ball through, right? And there's the release. Just imagine the comparison and say, hey, let's go to this bowling alley. Oh, by the way, the lanes are half as long, and there's a height differential that you have to navigate in order to bowl. Like, are those dudes just going to take a 2-step and then huck the ball, or are they going to like actually stick to the 5-step routine or whatever, however many steps they have?
Right.
Like, they're going to stick to their routine, the timing, the tempo, everything is that way for a reason. They just have the added challenge of having to navigate a on level, playing surface.
So it gets back to, it would actually be more detrimental to change the footwork than it would be to just try to navigate that step. Interesting. That's cool. Yeah. We're learning from the whip. The whip's hooking us up here. This is the whole point. All right. Awesome, man. I appreciate that. Okay. So where do we go from here?
We talked about just pure raw distance. What is your max that you think you could put it into a 50-foot circle 10 times out of 10?
So depends on the condition.
I was going to give you like a scenario. You step up at hole 13 at Blue Lake, and you got that narrow fair. Narrow. I use narrow in a very loose term. It's like 150 feet wide, but you've got that 150-foot fairway, and you got your most trusty force in your hand. How far do you think you could push that and still feel completely confident that it's going to land in that fairway?
Is 13... You got to help me out. I'm not super familiar. Is that the par 5?
No, it's the one right before that par 5. So it's just a long tunnel. It's about 600 or 700 feet. Yeah, it's about 700.
Is that the one that the basket's there, and then there's the little like mound is kind of behind the basket?
Yes.
And it's just pure blackberries on the left?
Yes.
Okay, right. Right after you throw through the tiny gap back into the like tucked in the basket that's tucked back into the trees, then you cut around, you turn the corner. That's 13?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I hate to do this to you, but I have to throw some caveats in there.
Okay.
My least favorite thing in disc golf is a 600-foot hole and not space to do a run up. So, like me and James Conrad, we feel the same pain because that hole does not have a good tee pad for actually getting distance off the tee. So I understand what you're saying about how far of a hole and how wide of a fairway, but let's also add in there's perfect level teeing surface with plenty of space to run up.
We'll just
add that
just how you want it. You and James can get out there with the paving stones. You lay it out. You got everything.
Exactly.
Okay, perfect.
So ideal conditions. And then wind is obviously the next biggest factor. So let's say it's calm to slightly tail.
Okay.
And we'll say I would feel comfortable right about probably around 500, 520. I think I could hit that fairway at 500 feet majority of the time. If I wanted to dial it back to like 100%, then, just throwing the pure hyzer, that's going to be at like 460.
Okay.
I'm disheartened.
Why?
What did you want to hear? What did you want to hear?
I knew what I expected to hear, but I don't know what I wanted to hear. I really don't. I knew that I was going to walk into that question and leave with just, wow, I don't throw far.
I barely know.
So I don't know what I expected how that to end any differently than it did.
For sure. Okay, I'll give you an alternative story, okay? Are you familiar with Adair down in Corvallis?
Yep.
Hole 18 is a par 4. There's two positions. There's like an 820 all the way across, the whole, park basically. And then there's a slightly shorter position at like 720, 715.
Yeah.
Where the basket's just kind of in the flats. Last time I played Willamette Open, that was my finishing hole in the first round. And we step up to the tee and there's perfect conditions, like 15, 20 mile per hour tailwind. I threw the 360 force perfectly, got the perfect catch on the wind, and I parked it about 16 feet right pin high. And that was a 720-foot throw exactly where I wanted to. So, like, that was a probably 1 in 1,000 shot, maybe more, 1 in 10,000. So, like, when you're talking about, like, how consistently can you or how, like, effectively can you, those super ideal shots basically disappear because those are outliers. Yeah. But bringing it into the statistical side, like 500 and under is going to be probably where anybody in the world's going to be comfortably. But yes, you can get farther if you get the magic throw.
Yeah. What do you think is the bigger advantage as somebody who has that elite level distance? The fact that you can reach those really, really crazy shots like that every once in a while, or the fact that you can throw a mid-range farther than most people throw distance drivers? Like, is it better that you can
it's
just you can club down? Because I give the same analogy with like Drew Gibson. Like, Drew can throw a rock where I would be throwing an absolute max distance, like everything I got on a Thrasher hyzer flip to stand up and work to even hope, and then he could just throw like a Casey Rock. You could probably throw one of your buzzes or whatever farther easily. You think is that the bigger advantage to it?
Yeah, absolutely. Did you catch the Nick Hyde coverage this past week?
Yes, I did. I think I know where you're going with this. Are you talking about Eagle with his shot on the first hole of that final round?
That's exactly.
And he clubs down to a mid-range and just out-throws the basket, and people are like barely reaching the basket on a lot of the other shots. Yeah, pretty crazy.
That's exactly. Yeah.
Wow. So if people want to see your in the bag, you did one with Central Coast a few years ago, and that's largely still accurate, correct?
That is, yeah, pretty much. I've got a few kind of things I've been playing with, more buzzes and stuff like that, but for the most part, my game is pretty similar.
Were the Hornets in that video? I can't remember.
No, okay. I'll give you the story on the Hornets. Okay. I had 2 out of the first run. It was the team ones they sent out, and they were just so perfect, truly the perfect disc. Like, I loved them to death. And Trojan claimed them, and I never could find a Hornet after that I liked.
Oh, okay. I think the only one
So
I bagged an Ace Race one for a little while. Right? They were an Ace Race disc, the Hornet, I think.
Yep, that's when they came out originally.
Yeah, I think I had an Ace Race one in the bag for some period of time, but I can't. That was a long time ago.
Yep. So I had those two for like 3 or 4 seasons, and once I lost them, I went to try to. I got 8 more Hornets, threw them all, didn't like them. It's just sometimes you just get lucky with the one disc. First try.
I was like that with my first run Thrasher. I chased down another replacement for that for a long time, and I still never quite got it. There's lots of different Thrashers that I like for different shots, but the first run, there's something about that first run that I had that I just couldn't quite duplicate. Even with another first run, same color, same weight, it just wasn't quite the same for some reason.
Yep.
It's one of those intangibles with disc golf. So, what is your perspective on where we stand in terms of the pars that we're setting at the top level? Like, for example, Waco, we're seeing Simon drive par 4s with a putter. A lot of the other players in contention can reach it on a pure spike hyzer that's taking a lot of the kind of variables out of play there. Do you think that there should be an adjustment to the kind of the way we perceive par for the top level, or do you think it would make more sense to just embrace the fact that disc golf is different and that you got to be getting birdies in order to win? You got to go low to win. What are your thoughts on that?
Sure. I could talk about this for a long time, so I'll try to keep my points succinct, but
okay.
I have about 3 or 4 points that I'll bring up. First point is, this is the bottom line, we could theorize about par all we want, but we are truly limited by park space for the courses and course design. So that's 100% the determinant of the fact we even have to talk about this as a topic.
Okay.
So unless we are...
I didn't consider that. That's an interesting point. Okay, go on.
Yeah, so nobody complains about par at Milo because Milo is a well-designed course, right? So you have the space, you've got appropriately open long par 3s and appropriately tight short par 3s, and then you don't have very many tweener holes. There might be 1 or 2 on the property, and then the par 4s take a jump to having to throw 2 shots to get to the green. So that's how golf courses should be designed, to hold true to that par, being appropriate.
Right.
So a course like Waco has a lot of legacy holes. It's probably been in the ground for a long time. So holes that might have been a par 4 20 years ago because of disc technology and skill level, it might have been true 2-shot par 4s at the time. They're just not now. So that the game's different. Technology's changed, skill level has changed, distance, has changed. So courses have to be redesigned with that in mind. So until that changes, we're going to see people go super low. Now, here's a counterpoint. Disc Golf Great Lakes Open is a legit course, and Paul still absolutely shredded it and shot the 18 down. So,
right.
Having played Toboggan so many times, hearing people say that course was soft and things like that, it boggled my mind.
Yeah.
Because as soon as I'd love to see them step onto hole 1 and tell me that that's soft, or 2 is an even better example. Go ahead, tell me that's a soft course. Because that course is all the way legit and stupid hard.
Yeah, and even when Paul was asked about this, he was asked what was the more impressive. People were kind of talking what was more impressive, Waco or D-Glow, and Paul, I think, chimed in. I think it was on Dixon Jower's Facebook page. Paul chimed in. He's like, there's not even a question. Toboggan all day, every day, 100%. There's no question at all.
Yeah, the par 3s that he mentioned in that response, he was the only guy to birdie him the whole weekend anyways. Those holes are so hard. So this kind of takes me to my second point, which is we inherited par from ball golf, which is let's say like a par 4, drive, approach, 2 putts. And the length of the hole, it's a very strict code of the length of the hole determines the par. But like the eye test would be, I drive it, I have to have a second shot to get to the green, and then I basically get 2 putts to make my expected par. And that would be good, because that's really hard to do in golf.
Sure.
So we inherited that system of understanding par. So on our side, we drive and we have 1 putt, and that's the expectation. So that the fact that you go from expecting to have 2 putts and you're still considered really good to expecting to have 1 putt as the standard, that's 1 stroke. That's why 1 under par on every hole is the expectation for the top guys. And until we change that, it's, we're going to see super low scores all over the place.
Do you personally see the low scores as a problem that needs to be addressed?
No, I don't think people who look at people say like this illegitimizes disc golf, like as if like people are watching disc golf and going like, oh, I can't believe he's 28 under par. I can never watch this sport.
Right.
Nobody freaking knows what that means. No one casually cares. Like, no one, like, you watch darts and someone has like a perfect 18 and you're like, huh, cool, I guess. Like, if you don't know, it doesn't matter how impressive or easy or hard something is.
Absolutely. And no one's recommending that the dartboards be shrinking the dartboards either, which is another thing that drives me absolutely bananas is the basket. Shrinking the baskets thing is like, I might just quit the game. That whole concept drives me absolutely crazy. Is anybody saying that the NBA should raise the hoop up 5 feet? Is anybody saying that the goal in soccer needs to be brought down by 5 feet on all sides? That whole concept just frustrates me to no end.
All right, well, nerd. Well, I'll hit you up. I'll hit you up with some arguments there, and maybe give you something to think. Okay.
All right, hit me.
All right. Some of the sports you mentioned have been around for a very long time, and if you go back into the history of those sports, equipment changes happened in an adjustment to the skill of the players. So I'm guessing basketball's always been 10 feet.
Yeah.
But so sports do evolve. However, we've got enough people playing. I think it would be counterproductive to set the expectation that baskets should be smaller. But I do think that baskets should be smaller on, like, I want to try it out. Like, I want to play a USDGC on small baskets because I think, I don't think that, kind of rework my point here. I don't think that smaller baskets make the sport better. I think it just creates more separation between the really good guys and the averagely good guys. So I think it would introduce an element of skill that lets people like Paul, who are going to make it on whatever basket size you put in front of them, truly outshine the dudes who are getting lucky and catching corner pocket half the time.
That's fair. I think one of the things that I really don't like about the idea is that it's just not feasible to switch out all the baskets on all the different courses. And I also I resent the idea of having specific equipment just for the top pros because there's not necessarily other sports that do that. And I think that's one of the coolest things about disc golf is the accessibility. Like you mentioned Milo earlier, I could blow off work tomorrow and go play Milo from the long pins, and other than the temporary holes, obviously, I would be playing the exact layout that the Beaver State will be contested on coming up very soon. And that's not something that you get to do just because you feel like it in traditional golf. You can't just go and decide to play some of these incredible tracks. There's huge fees and you have to be a member and whatever else. I love that accessibility, and it would make me sad if they were playing the same thing, but then all of a sudden their equipment was just different, and then it wasn't the same as any of the baskets I'm playing on. I just feel like that would harm the experience for me personally.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I don't want to see this as like a sweeping change to the game, but I want to, like, it's theorized. I want to actually just, like, let's try it. Like, let's just do an exhibition, big event, and put the baskets out there, that we think are the right size for the elite guys, and see if it actually makes a difference.
Yeah.
Like, it would be great to actually get some data on, does this even have an impact whatsoever?
Exactly.
And then we have less of a debate and more stats to really rely on.
And if there was ever a place to do it, USDGC, because that's where we test all of the new rules and new things.
Yeah,
it seems like
it is.
That's where hazards came around. That's where
stroke and distance and all that kind of I remember a long time ago there was an interview with Nate Doss, and he was talking about the USDGC, and he was saying how he kind of resented the fact that his generation was like the guinea pigs for that, and that eventually it'll be dialed in and it won't get changed constantly. But like it was frustrating for him that it was constantly moving and changing, and they're trying out these new things, and it's supposed to be our most prestigious event, yet they keep tinkering with it all the time. I always thought that was an interesting perspective, and not one I've heard from anybody else.
Yeah, well, he's absolutely right. Like, I think that first year that I did well at, 2009, was the first year they did stroke on distance as the course rule. Every throw, every OB was stroke and distance.
Yeah.
So, like, I was proud of myself for just not, like, having an epic meltdown that week with that rule being in place. Like, it was insane. Like, people were taking 10s and 12s every hole.
Yeah.
Were you on Anthon's card for that round?
No.
Was he third card then? Because I was there. I was there for that. I was caddying for Ziggy.
No, okay. So, gosh, I think if you go look up my old Facebook, I have one. It was Kale, me, I think Derek Billings, and maybe Mike Joe. It was 2009 USDGC. I think it was the first time Will won. No, Nico won.
Yeah, Nico won in 2009.
Okay.
Yeah. Nico won. He had the big purse. They bumped it to $15,000, and I was super stoked that it was going to be my first time getting 4 digits, because last year, like, 40th place got $1,000, and here I am in 14th, and they shrunk the payout. I got like $935, and I was like, what? Like, I was so bummed, because I was like finally going to get over $1,000, and then that was the one year they shrunk it up to the top. So I was like, oh man.
See, they got to tinker with it. They got to play around. It's true. Nate's right.
Yeah. They do. So yeah, there's so many gimmicky stuff that they do at USGC. It is kind of lame. They hold us hostage for their mad tricks. Why not just hold some tournaments and test it out and see if it actually works? Like, why do you have to use USGC for that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I'm picturing Harold Duvall doing the like rubbing his hands together, evil kind of like cackling in the background.
Yeah, the mad scientist. Totally. They'll never expect this. We're using tone poles next year.
Yeah, that would be great.
That would be fun.
Ricky would love that. Ricky would be the greatest, like, immediately the best disc golfer.
Oh my god! Yeah, absolutely. That's the other thing about the baskets thing. Before we just leave that completely behind, is that they did do that couple test events with DD Marksman baskets, but those aren't like. Those are designed to not catch. Those are like designed to really. It just makes no sense. So if you're going to shrink them, it's got to at least be like a smaller size of a basket that's designed to catch well. I mean, I thought that whole thing was frustrating. It's like, why don't you just take the chains out and just whatever, you just try to land it in the bottom of the tray.
Well, like the Cam Todd basket, is that kind of what you're looking at?
That makes sense to me. But again, it's not feasible to just switch every basket to that basket, and then again, if you say, okay, well, the Disc Golf Pro Tour or the National Tour is going to take on that basket, then it gets back to what I said earlier, where now all of a sudden the pros are playing on different equipment, and it just puts more separation between the amateurs and the pros. Also, if you're a local pro, say you're just a guy who's playing around Portland in this area, and then you're trying to make that step up. Now, all of a sudden, you're playing on the Pro Tour, and the baskets are smaller, or there's a whole different diameter that you're working with. It's tough to navigate that as well. So that's not necessarily the best idea. There's just so many different issues with that. But it would be interesting, like you said, Dion, that does it actually even have an effect? We don't know. We don't genuinely don't know. Some of the top players are so good, it might not make any difference. You know, when you're Ricky or Paul, and the margin, even the variance of them hitting left and right is so small most of the time. It's just, it doesn't really would it even make a difference? We really don't know.
Yeah, and what I like to think is, in an event like that, like a dude who maybe is not the best, like driver, or, you know, like his game is predicated on like touch around the basket. Like I could see a dude like that, like having the world championship in his pocket, because he's the one who's on, and it doesn't matter where he's at. He's making all of those putts, and like that's where he's winning the tournament. You know, like putting obviously determines how successful someone is in a tournament today, but if you look at ball golf, like the dudes who are hot with the putter are winning. Like that's just how it goes.
Yeah,
so,
and since we've started tracking with all the UDisc statistics, it's actually kind of gone against the whole putt for dough kind of thought process, because it seems like the most important thing is getting inside the circle in regulation. That seems to be the most important aspect of consistently doing well.
Yeah, but is that because everyone's putting so well? You know, is it because of the basket that the driving is more important now?
Yeah, it could be because the putting is not quite as difficult as it could be. That is true, because obviously anybody who's played traditional golf, putting can be brutal, just absolutely brutal. The amount of skill that it takes in general is vastly different. But the key thing that I think about par, and part of why I asked you this whole thought process, is that a lot of people seem to think it's like a problem that needs to be fixed, and I think we should just be embracing the differences. We're not golf. If I wanted to play golf and have everything resemble golf, I would go play golf. You know, we're also throwing a frisbee. You know, it's not the same thing. So why are we so worried about being compared against it? You know, I just kind of don't agree with that thought process in general. We're doing so well. We love this game for a reason. I think we should be embracing those differences. Would you agree?
I would agree, but just in general in this conversation, I would say, you know, par being kind of irrelevant or being a topic at all is just a symptom of course design not being at its potential. Like if courses are designed to be challenging for elite players, like you're not going to see smoking hot rounds, because, you know, it's just more demanding. So until we get super awesome, well-designed courses and property where the designer is in control of all the features of the hole, like that's not going to be a reality. So
yeah, I hear you. Just being more specific, 18 at Waco, if you've seen any of the coverage, do you think that should be a par 4 on the Disc Golf Pro Tour?
For the top guys, no. That's a reachable hole. Why would that be a par 4?
Right. And then I kind of brought this up on some kind of a discussion board, and somebody had said, oh, well, you know, you can't just set par for the top people, but if we're not setting par on courses that are being used for Disc Golf Pro Tour events for the people who are in contention to win, then who are we setting par for? You know, the guy who's in 100th place. Does that make sense? You know, that I don't know. It's interesting.
Well, yeah, I just keep tracing that back to course design. That course was designed, you know, that hole might have been a real par 4 for the majority of its life. Today, it's not a par 4. Like that's you know, that's just how it goes.
Yeah, I also think that if that is a problem that somebody wants to try to address, I think there needs to be some more comfort just being okay with having holes where par is a good score to take. That is definitely an aspect of traditional golf. There are holes out there that people are not expecting to get birdie on. It's a difficult par 4. They're looking to take a 4. That's what they're looking to do. But in disc golf, we're like, oh, if nobody birdied this all weekend, the par is wrong. Well, is it or isn't it? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, we want it both ways, is what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We want it all. Interesting, man.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show, Dion. I really appreciate it. Hopefully we can continue to have discussions with you going forward. You can be our kind of pro insight whenever we need to kind of have that perspective of somebody who's been around the game for a long time, can throw a mile, can throw a paper plate farther than me and Andy can throw our distance drivers. we can dial you up when we need that perspective.
I can always use a good humbling.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I love chatting about it, and thanks for having me on, guys. I really appreciate that.
Our pleasure, for sure. If anybody wants to stay in touch with what you're up to, you have some social media pages, or you don't have like a YouTube channel or anything like that, do you?
No, not yet. I kind of want to get something going. I feel like the timing is right, and it's fun to talk and be heard. So maybe I'll just start my own kind of rambling channel. But for the moment, people can find me on Instagram, Discraft Dion, which is kind of my only social media out at the moment.
Okay, great. Yeah, you'd be a great dude to have a YouTube channel, man. Maybe I can help you get the ball rolling with that, and that would be great. You have so much that you could teach people. I'd love to try to bring you in at some point to do maybe some distance basics here on my channel as well. That would be fantastic.
Anything basics, anything,
really, anything.
He's a good player. He's not just an arm.
Yeah. You're more than just a massive arm, Dion. You have more to offer the world.
Yeah, thanks for recognizing that, Andy. I appreciate that, man.
Wait, do you know how to putt? Can you make a 30-footer? We didn't even ask this question.
Oh, God.
All right.
Some days I feel like I can't.
All right, we'll leave it at that. Thank you so much, Dion.
All right, thanks, guys.
Cheers, man.
Cheers.
Well, that's it for this episode. Once again, huge thank you to Andy and Dion for being on the show. We absolutely hope to check in with Dion more in the future and get his take on things. He's kind of, I'm really kind of hoping he can be our pro perspective that we can bring in whenever we need to kind of have that thought process from that really high level of the game brought into the conversation based on the topic that is at hand. So we'd love to be able to check in with Dion, and I just had a great time talking to him. He's a really, really chill dude who knows a lot about disc golf, very sharp, and a lot of fun to have a conversation with. So that is it for this episode. Big thank you to everybody for listening. I will check you all very soon. Cheers.